for the third entry in my series of video game movies comes the hotly anticipated at the time adaptation of the insanely popular video game of the same name. Does it live up to the game's legacy? Is it worth your time? Does Jean-Claude Van Damme kick Bison's ass? 1994 Street Fighter is based on the insanely popular video game Street Fighter 2. Not Street Fighter 1, because that one sucked. Oh no, Street Fighter 2, and its 1,378 different incarnations that came after that. Seriously, look it up. There are so many different versions of this game that they released, it's pretty much impossible to count. The story of Street Fighter 2, the game, is, like a lot of games of that time period, kinda thin. Pretty much a bunch of different people from around the world with different abilities get together and fight. And that's about it. In the game itself, there's not really much of a reason given. They just come together to fight. Now, while the overarching story of the game is not very fleshed out, what is fleshed out in the game, unlike other games of that time period, is the characters themselves. Each of them comes with a little backstory to shed a little bit more light on their character. It ain't much, but it's more than most games had of that time period. But overall, the story's pretty thin. And I'm not talking about any extended universe stuff or animes or comic books or any other crap you could have found about the Street Fighter world. I'm talking about what is presented in the game. And at that point in time when this movie was made, that's pretty much what you had. And the game was insanely popular and still is till this day. But its heyday was definitely the early to mid-90s. So it was understandable that during the video game movie boom of the early 90s, that a movie adaptation of this crazy popular game got greenlit. Now I remember going and seeing this movie in theaters and I was super hyped for it, because I was really into Street Fighter 2, like a lot of teens back then. And I don't know exactly what I expected out of a Street Fighter movie, but at the time, honestly, it's not what I got. Back then, 25 years or however long ago it was, I remember leaving the theater pretty disappointed. Disappointed is probably not the word. I just downright didn't like this movie. I didn't feel like it represented the characters that I had come to love in the way that I thought they should have been. However, 20 some odd years later, I see it again, and maybe my opinion has changed a little. So what's Street Fighter the movie about? Ultimately, it involves M. Bison, the main villain from the game, played by the late Raul Julia, in his last performance I might add, holding a whole bunch of people captive for a ransom of
$1 million.
I can't remember the exact amount, but it's a whole lot of money. He ultimately wants to get this money and perform other terrorist acts and get even more money and pretty much take over the world and form his own country with his own currency, laws, and him as the dictator. In doing this, he's going up against a UN-esque organization called the AN, which I don't really know why they just didn't call it the UN. It's not like the name UN is copyrighted or anything. But whatever. His main adversary at the AN is the character Guile from the game, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme. All the characters that were available in the game at the time the movie was made show up in the movie one way or another. And they do a pretty good job aesthetically of bringing these characters to life. A lot of them look just like their counterparts from the game. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Let's be real, Blanca, whatever you call him, he looks like shit. The movie also follows Ryu and Ken as they infiltrate Bison's network, and Chun-Li accompanied by E. Honda and Balrog, who have their own reasons for trying to face off against Bison. They're all in one way or another kind of working for or with Guile, and in the end they all converge on the main compound in Bisonville, or whatever the hell he's calling it, for a climactic showdown. So in other words, the story of the movie is pretty thin too. Not as thin as the game, but it's thin. So the characters are there, the story's kind of thin, so how about the action? This is a movie called Street Fighter. I'm sure it has some really cool action. Well, for a movie called Street Fighter, there's actually not a lot of actual hand-to-hand fighting in it. Closer to the end, some brawls break out, but beyond the big climactic showdown between Bison and Guile, which I don't even know if I'd call it climactic, but whatever, beyond that fight, there's not really a lot of hand-to-hand fighting in the game. And there's absolutely no fights that happen on streets. The rest of the action's okay. It all looks good. There's a lot of money thrown at this movie, you can tell. For 1994, they had a very high budget, and it pays off for what you see on screen. Now, while all the action and explosions and special effects are there, that may be what brought you here, but that is not what's gonna keep you here. What is gonna keep you here, you ask? That ham and motherfucking cheese, baby. This movie is so damn cheesy that if you watch it all the way through, you could possibly get constipated by the amount of cheese that's in it. It is one of the cheesiest movies I've ever seen, and definitely one of the most cheesy movies from a major Hollywood studio. So I know what you're saying. It's shit then. No, because while it is super cheesy and super hammy and really overacted and big and crazy, it was meant to be that way. And that's what I missed when I was a teenager. This movie's not supposed to be serious. They intentionally made it this way. If you go into it knowing that, This movie is an absolute ball. You will laugh your ass off at every turn. Pretty much every time someone in this movie opens their mouth and words come out, hilarity ensues. And while everybody in the movie is funny as hell, the absolute creme de la creme, the best of all, the top shelf of this movie is absolutely, without a doubt, Raul Julia. Classically trained, award-winning actor in Street Fighter. Every scene that M. Bison, aka Raul Julia, is in is absolute gold. This was sadly his final role because he passed away shortly after filming. And while some people say that in a negative light, that this was his final film, his swan song, I don't. Because the guy seems like he was having an absolute blast making this movie. Is this movie going to win him any awards? No, but it seemed like he went out with a bang and had a fantastic time doing it. And I want to say thanks to him, because without him in that role, while the movie still would have been fun, it would have been nowhere near as great as it is. But he's not the only one that's fun to watch. Oh no, good old JCVD has some great lines in this flick as well. He also, like pretty much everybody on screen, looks like he's having a great time making this goofy, hammy movie. This movie absolutely falls into the genre so bad it's good. And I think that is what they were going for when making this movie. This movie came out in a time when Hollywood didn't know what to do with video game movies. Video games at that time were still viewed as kids' toys. So I think that the movies that Hollywood made, they were trying to appeal to kids because that's who they thought would be watching these movies. Which is just another case of Hollywood not getting what video games are all about. They're getting better nowadays, but that's a discussion for a whole nother video. Honestly, if they had taken a more serious approach to Street Fighter, I don't think it would have worked as well. While it is what I wanted when I initially saw the movie, I don't think it would have been nearly as memorable. And while the movie for years was blasted as one of the worst movies ever made, in more recent years it started to gain a cult following. And I think now people are starting to appreciate what the filmmakers were trying to do with this movie. And make no mistake about it, like I said, they were trying to do this. This wasn't a mistake. Some of the things that show up in it and that are said in it are so goofy, there's no way that they weren't trying for it. In fact, if you look up some of the history of the movie, the filmmakers flat out say that yes, that's what we were going for, and people just didn't get it at the time. Well, now I do, and I enjoyed going back to this movie a lot more than I expected to. So in the end, I would say that Street Fighter the movie is definitely worth a buy, especially if you are a fan of the so bad it's good genre. If you're not a fan of those movies, then no, you probably shouldn't buy it. But me, myself, I like them, and a lot of people out there do. I mean, look at the success of the Sharknado movies and the like. So yeah, I'd recommend go out and buy it. You can get a good copy of it for really cheap nowadays. So there it is, guys, my review of Street Fighter the movie. If you enjoyed and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It helps my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Game over!
I mean, this movie just has some of the greatest lines and cheesiest and hammy delivery out there. There's gold at every turn, like this.
Quick! Change the channel!
And Raul Julia is killing it in every scene.
I guess you didn't see that, did you?
And one of my two absolute favorite lines from the movie is this one.
Colonel, have you lost your mind?
No. You've lost your balls.
Or right here, how he's just stone cold as hell.
You had him shot as you ran away.
I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it. For you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
And my absolute favorite line of the movie.
And I'm going to kick that son of a bitch Bison's ass so hard.
Any movie that ends with this is awesome. Alright, what's next?
Your mind.